Tim, we can't hear you. You're on mute.
Sorry about that. Try again. Welcome everybody to Uptown Progressive Action's April meeting to meet with the District 10 candidates. I'm going to leave you all on mute for the time being. We will have questions if there's time. Put them in the chat and we'll wrangle them as best we can. Our moderator is going to be Lena Melendez, one of our steering committee. Our timekeeper is going to be Tim Frasca, who's going to be vigilant and ruthless because we have to get through this thing. Each candidate's going to have a half an hour. They're going to appear by themselves. There's no, there's no debate going on. And if there's time at the end of their half hour, we have allotted 5 minutes to try and get questions from the floor. We're recording this in case anybody needs to see it who can't make it. And is there anything else I missed? If not, take it away, Lena, and I'll let our first guest in. Is that okay?
Oh, sure.
Okay. Here he is. Welcome, Josue.
Oh, I've lost visual contact.
He is here.
Okay, let's just.
We hear you, Lena.
Okay. Just wanted to get a little weird not to see anybody.
What happened to your visual?
I don't know, but I will. I got it back. Okay, here we go. Hi, Josue. How are you?
Hi, Lena. How you doing? Nice to see you. Doing
Same
great.
here. Welcome to the UPA District 10 City Council Candidate Forum. You have 2 minutes for this beginning section. We ask each candidate to start off by introducing themselves within the time frame of the following 2 questions. Since New York City public policy is so determined by the mayor and Albany, what power does City Council have to make a difference? And how do you differ from other candidates seeking election to this office?
If I understand correctly, I rephrase the question, a lot of the powers from the city comes from the mayor and the state, correct? Yes. Hi, my name is Josue Perez. Many of you know me. Thank you first for having this time to talk to yourself, and thank you for putting this together. Very quickly, we understand that a lot of the powers live with the mayor. And one of the things that we had to get is to negotiate and get some mayors that will be willing and have the skill to work with Albany. Even though we're not part of Albany, but we have the power to advocate with our local electeds, especially in our state and Senate. And that's one of the main differences that I have as a candidate. I could work with my local state Senate representative and state and assembly, and I would work with them no matter what. That's different from other candidates that sometimes they struggle to work together. Me, myself also, I consider myself independent in the sense that I'm very independent for political interests, which means that once in the city council, I will be a voice for the community. I will speak up when the Speaker of the House or the mayor is not doing what's been benefit for the community. For example, one of the issues that we have for the longest in New York City is housing. Now people are vocal about it because it's popular, but it was even worse. And there's other issues that are going on in the city, and our city councils only speak about them when it's popular. I would be different. I would speak up against the mayor. I will work with the local elected officials to make a difference.
Okay, thank you for that. Now the next section you have 13 minutes.
That beep was timed up, if I'm correct, right?
I
hear a beep. I hear a beep. That was timed up, right?
No, it wasn't. That's just people.
Oh, it wasn't.
That's just people coming into the room.
Okay, I was just want to make sure. Okay.
Did you have something else to say? I didn't cut you off, did I?
No, it's okay, no problem. Just we continue. That's all right. I think 2 minutes over already.
Okay. So the next section has 3 questions, and you have 13 minutes with which to answer them. Each question, you get roughly about 4.5 minutes. First question, what committees will you seek to join in the city council and why?
That's an easy one. First of all, you know, I'm a teacher for over 20 years, almost 25 already. And definitely I want to join the education committee. First of all, we need to know, and we have somebody that has education in the DNA. Like both of my parents were teachers, as well as small business owner. So we need to know someone from inside that know what it's like to work in the classroom. How is the environment? One of the major mistakes that we use in the educational system is to use people that are not familiar with the educational system. I'm being very familiar also with the Tier 1 school system and the low-level school system. Because we have, for example, I know that we have principals and maybe we have a superintendent that are from New York City public school, but they went to Stuyvesant. They don't know what it's like to be teaching or to have an education setting in the Bronx. And often the education setting that they set is not going accordingly to our structures. So that I want to be there to make sure also that our mayor, and I want to aim mayor control in New York City public school to be ended. Like for example, one of the things that I'm gonna say here in this forum for the first time is that it's very popular now to say remove SA's agents, right? It's extremely popular. However, I spoke to hundreds of teachers. Not a single one is in favor of doing it. So before we propose something, we have to go to the ground and figure out why. We know that 99% of the safety agents are Black and brown. And in New York City, I don't know anywhere else, but in New York City, they're friendly and they're there for public safety issues, not just for the teacher, but for the student themselves. That very often, like for example, I could tell you in my school, we have 5 lockdown already. In now age, not to having safety in public safety in our school is insane. But most people, just because it's popular, is repeating it. So we have to go not for what's popular, but for what is right. Second, I want to do the youth and community development. I always love the youth. I know that that's one of the biggest things that we lack in our district. Most youth programs are outside the district. So a lot of the programs that you want to find for you, like the soccer initiative, I don't understand why it never got to our district. And last but not the least, I want to work in small business. As you know, I'm a big supporter of small business. And I want to make sure that in our district, no more business close their door because the support that we get from a small business is not getting to our district. And even when help is available, most of them don't even know about it.
2 minutes to spare. Next
2 minutes to
question.
spare. I'm going fast.
Okay, so that's okay because you will have
I will
more
have
time
more
for
questions,
for
yes.
the end. Okay, so the next question is, what are the top 3 legislative proposals you will fight for?
There's several legislative proposals that are, and again, this correlate overlap with previously questions, and I think they all go in the circle. One of the, I wish there's more than 3, but for the first one, I want to really work on it is from a small business. Getting support from a small business. The small business are the engine of the community, and especially in this pandemic, our small business in our district were left behind. And correlate to one of the questions at the end, which is also means that one of the main reasons the small business close their doors is because they don't have the means to negotiate when the lease is over. So I really want to make one of my top priority to pass the Small Business Just Survival Act and make sure that that the small business also get corporate tax reduction. And it cannot be heavily on the business owner, but it should be mostly on the landlords. A lot of times a building might have 5 business owners and 4 are closed. That business owner have to carry all the corporate taxes, or sometimes it's too high for them to keep the door open. Again, education is big. I want to work in legislation reform for education. Now we have a big chance with the funding that we're getting from the thanks to Biden administration to make sure that we could get enough money to get a small classroom size. especially for the school that needs them the most. So I want to work with this education and legislation to make sure that we get the funding for a small classroom size. Now more than ever, we need mental health and academic intervention teams in the school system. We need to hire at least 5,000 new guidance counselors to deal with teachers. I could tell you firsthand as a chapter leader that this pandemic had taken a toll in a lot of teachers, because it's not only as a person we all have suffered, but at the same time they've been in the front line dealing with students and situation present itself that sometimes we're not even prepared to deal with it. And that's part of the legislation we're gonna have. Third, I wanna work in public safety. I want to introduce a few bills myself about public safety, especially in parks. Our parks are underfunded, and we need more public safety. We need better security in our public park. And also, we had to make sure that we're tough on crime. We got to be tough on hate crime. I want to introduce a bill so also to making assaulting an elderly something or a priority in New York City, because quite too often it's enough. It's almost every day in the news that an elderly person get assaulted and people don't fear any consequences. Again, I wish there's more. Those are my top three legislation priority. I'd love to do more because I'm big also in the environmental justice, and I will leave it at three because you asked for three.
Okay, how are we doing on time, Tim?
He's still under. Next
Cool.
question, plenty of time.
Okay, now the third question, real estate. The Inwood rezoning was passed. People are afraid of the displacement of residents and small businesses. What do you plan to do to ameliorate this situation? And what do you see as the main causes and solutions to housing and commercial rent costs here?
So the Inwood rezoning sadly passed. I know Lena, our mentor from the rezoning, we worked really hard on the rezoning fight. I could say, and I'm proud of that, once I joined, or when my team joined the Inwood rezoning, we were able to lift the momentum and engage the Latino community. I was part of that process. A lot of candidates that are running for district and they were not involved in that process against the Inwood rezoning, and I was able to be involved in both in the groundwork or getting the people engaged, going to every single forum that was there at school or whatever, but also part of the organizing. So it was very active on that. I'm proud of that. But we know that also we could make sure that once we get there to city council, two things could happen. The first, that they make good on the promise. Quite too often, they make promise, but they are not even in the fine print. And even if they are, they're too big and they don't follow through it. For example, one of the things that we're pretty proud of it, and I'm the only candidate here, that supported the Inwood Library. And we know that if we didn't put that fight, they will never build an alternate library because it was not on the proposal, it was not written in. And now we have one, but we also had to make sure that when they say if they want to keep 25% affordable housing, it is 25% affordable housing. But I will use anything in my power as a city council to veto any luxury apartment in our district. One of the reasons I keep running for city council this time around is because of that, because of the placement. And this placement start on not only a residential, which is oftentimes what we'll focus on, but also a small business. If a small business get displaced, and that's the easy one after rezoning, after the rezoning passed, so then they could skyrocket the rent of every small business. Once small business disappeared, you lose your culture. The price of the cost of living in the neighborhood is so high that even if your rent doesn't go up, you live in displacing or relocating from your neighborhood. And we're not allowing that to happen. So we got to make sure we're working legislation that protects small business, but also we got to make sure that no buildings or luxury buildings are built in the Inwood or Washington Heights area.
Okay, so we have some questions in the chat. This is the part where there's questions from at the end of the half hour for questions from the floor, which will appear in the chat. And when we go to the chat, there are people that have asked, how are the candidates independent of the establishment, not aligned with Senator Jackson, Congressman Espaillat, or the downtown mayor's office machines?
I think they answered the question themselves.
And would you seek commercial rent control to protect small stores?
Definitely. Commercial rent control must be seek to it. And not only that, we had to extend it and make sure that, because even in the fine print, when they say commercial rent control, what do they mean by commercial rent control? Sometimes we get tricked in it, because I know a lot of the real estate lobbyists use that term to just say that they're doing something for small business, but they're actually not. And the same thing, I have to be careful when we say the last question about housing. What they call affordable housing have to be redefined. What is affordable housing, especially in our district, because we compare to Manhattan. So the middle income is not separated from the rest of Manhattan. And we don't earn the same that somebody in Midtown or downtown earn. And we also have to make sure, and one of the things that are the policies that I'm looking for as a candidate is that not only low income family get a piece of the pie of affordable housing, but also mid-income family. I want to work in legislation for affordable housing for all. If you're a teacher, you should be able to afford living in the city. I could afford living in the city, but after 20 years of teaching. So when you start teaching as a career, your first 5 years, it's almost impossible to live on a teacher salary.
How do you define affordability?
Affordability, it should start with the minimum wage. Can the minimum wage give you an affordable condition to have the minimum, the living condition as already defined by city and state, which is not only the physical necessity, but at the same time to follow the burden of living in a society, which is the basic necessity of rent, food, and have a spare at least 20% for entertainment.
Okay, let's see, there is another question, and I've been asked to let you know who asked the question. David Dubnow asked, do you support Corey Johnson's plan for rezoning?
No, I don't know why Resign plans for Corey Johnson. His plan has a lot of loopholes on it, and it's just a language bargain. One of the things that we had to also start doing better and follow the process of the land process is to use language that is understand for the common folks. So the language, all this bargaish language that they use, seems to confuse us and it is misleading. So we had to use simple language to engage the community in a way that they be able to understand it.
Okay, if there are no more questions in the chat, I have lightning round because we have a couple of minutes. Yes, Tim?
Yes, we have over 10 minutes because we started late.
Okay, so lightning round questions. And people can add questions into the chat if they want. Would you accept member privilege?
Yes.
Do you support the New York Health Act?
Yes.
Do you support IONY?
Yeah,
Invest
100%.
in our New York.
Yes.
Which bills out of the 6?
All of them.
Are you accepting corporate donations, either directly or indirectly?
No.
Do you believe NYPD Commissioner Dermot Shea should resign?
Yes.
Do you believe Governor Cuomo should resign?
No.
Do you support NYCHA RAD program?
No.
Do you support a Green New Deal for NYCHA?
Yes.
Any other questions in the chat? Yes, I think there is. No, there's not.
No, there's no more questions. More people asking questions.
There's one more from Tim.
Okay. Do you support the Soho rezoning?
Soho rezoning, I'm not gonna have a yes or no question before I do a research, because I don't know what is proposed on the Soho rezoning. So most rezonings are, if it's to develop ultra or let's call it upzoning. We're opposed, but I have to look at the details of what is proposed on the rezoning before I have an answer for that.
Okay.
There's two questions in Nebraska up higher in the chat.
Higher in the chat.
One question was just posted.
No, we sent it. It's there.
One of the mayoral candidates proposed that lawsuits against police abuses that result in payouts to the individual affected should come from the NYPD budget. What do you think about that idea?
I would have to sit down first and see what would be the consequences of having to propose something like that. As of right, it looks like a great proposal, but we had to actually look at the consequences. Anything that we take measure from had to make sure that public safety is not in jeopardy, and at the same time, we got to make sure that the members' right is not violated. Because remember, I'm a union delegate, and I know that for the public sectors, usually it's a domino effect. So if you start getting the rise from one of the public sector, we start doing at the other one. Because I would like to see not how the NYPD is affected, but how each member of the NYPD is affected. Because as a public employee on the public sector, you shouldn't be losing your rights, and you shouldn't be losing or compensating. So that's a question that has a lot of low end that I will have to see it first. Because if we're already reducing budget in the NYPD, and on top of that, we have $3 billion lawsuit, then it's going to be kind of a nightmare.
What about from Nick Linden from Inwood Indivisible? Why do you accept member deference?
Member
deference, like when.
Oh yeah, the preference. I think you said at the beginning. Member privilege.
Right.
Yeah. Well, the member privilege, I wanted to be able to veto and to accept whatever is built especially in our district. So one of the member privilege that I want to use is to veto rezoning or to veto luxury condominiums in our district. And that's one of the most specific reasons, because without a preference, the inward rezoning, it will go 100% full throttle. And I want to make sure that as a city council, I have the veto power to oppose any luxury apartment that is going to affect the displacement or the residents.
The next question is from David Dubnow. Do you think that the police funding should be cut and policing reimagined?
Police funding should be cut. Definitely we have to look at the budget, and you have to look, I don't want to say one of the questions you guys on the previous question is how much should it be the fund, how much should be cut? That's something that I want to see and sit down at the table with the community input. Again, I will have to see, due to the fiscal crisis that is going on in the 2021, 2022, most of the city department agencies will have to keep cuts. But at the same time, I want to see relocations of those funding. I want to be able to relocate some of those fundings from, let's say, overtime, or from having armory that we don't need in training officers and having more mental health intervention crises.
And the question for me is, what is your position on statewide testing in public schools?
Well, this is again a complicated question if you break it down, because there should be some standard of measurement for the student. But at the same time, this testing that we have used for the longest in our school district have only failed our school system. And it's because of the reason, and we've done it before, because those people designing the exam, they are not part of the inner school system. And oftentimes they fail to address, and they usually they discriminate against our population or minority. So until we get a fair testing for state, we should have no testing until we know how to get it right.
You said that I have another question. You said that the mayor should not have so much power over public schools. Who should have that power?
This is again a question that have to be not easy question, because also what we used to have didn't work. So it had to be something between. But my biggest proposal would be to have an independent board choosing by the people, choosing by with the elected people, deciding who's going to be in the district board. I would like to see also to have teachers and principal more saying on who represent us. Oftentimes, we don't have a saying on anything that's happening on the DOE. For the contrary, me as a teacher find out what happened in the DOE later than teachers. It's a funny story, made short. I found out when our school was torn because a student took his cell phones out and saw on Twitter that school was closed tomorrow. That's totally insane. So teachers and not counted principals are out of the equation. To be able to have control of the equation, they should have an independent board, part of that power to control the city. The education council, the education committee, basically have no power on what the mayor is saying. So we had to shift some of the power from the mayor and education to the committee. I would love to see break down the DOE. The DOE is a large institution, and because it's so big, so there's so many structural loophole that anything could happen. So break down the DOE. That's one proposal that I have.
This is the 5-minute warning. We're going to wrap up in 5 minutes with Mr. Perez.
That's a lot of time. So Jumita asks, do you believe law enforcement should be in New York City public schools?
Yes, and I would tell you why. Oh, it depends on what you call when you pull the keyword law enforcement, we have to be careful there too. We need to have, and especially nowadays after 9/11, it's insane to have no security on my public safety building. We have a student that are less, we have buildings that are less secure that have security. It doesn't have to be law enforcement, but they have to be some sort of security. I know what I'm doing. I know what I'm telling you. So for example, I teach in Fordham University. I used to teach in high school. I know it was live in the 90s. So there was several ugly fights in front of my building last year. Without the security there, it could be seriously. We had a parent last year that intended to go into our building and hurt a teacher, literally. So we have to have some sort of security. And again, 99% of the safety agencies are Browns are Latino. In 20 years after this teacher, I haven't, all the one I have seen is minority and friendly. And I haven't seen any single encounter between a safety agency and a student. They're usually friendly and are there to protect. Do they need to be reforms on it? Definitely. As an educator in the classroom for 20 years, I know some of those reforms that have to be done for school safety agency. For example, one of them, if you're not in the system, you will not know, is school, sorry, the mayor and the safety agent play with the numbers on reporting violence incidents in the school. And oftentimes they're told what to do. So we had to fix that.
There was a correction to that question, and she updated it to, do you believe
So NYPD.
NYPD should be in New York?
It doesn't have to be NYPD, but at the same time, it cannot be DOE. Make sure, I want to make this clarification. It's a double-edged sword, because I know, again, from the inside, and this is why we need somebody that have a training in education, because what will happen is if the DOE had total control of the safety agency, they will literally hide whatever incident happens on the school, and the school agents sometimes will be told to disappear and be able to do different things. I'm not getting into details a lot. By having the principal, for example, controlling what the school agency could be also kind of a problem. The best solution, we have to have an independent department, not DOE, not NYPD, that deal with the security of the building.
How are we doing on time?
We're good, but we're getting very close to the end. So if that's all the questions, maybe we can say.
Would you like to give some closing statement?
Well, definitely. First of all, thank you for those questions that you guys posted, and thank you for putting this together, this forum. Questions were great. Again, to know more about me, if you haven't heard of it, I'm an immigrant for the Dominican Republic. When I got here to the United States, my first job was as a delivery boy in a supermarket, and I worked the low end of the spectrum on the jobs. So I know what it's like to work at the bottom. So I've been working for 25 years. I'm the only candidate that have worked the system, that have worked outside the political system. So I know once you have the experience, for example, if you went a delivery, you know what it's like, and you even tip better when you have the delivery because you have that experience. I get a part of the system. My mom retired as a home attendant. She retired because of an injury. She almost went into a wheelchair, and she struggled so much to get the help that she needs. We want to be able to share that system. It's about getting the help that we have. So many families go hungry because they don't have, and that should not happen. My father retired as a taxi driver. So again, I know the struggle of our class. Something that I wouldn't speak about it again is that those middle class community or that represent the majority of the people in our community are left out of the communication, are left out of the political process. For example, oftentimes when they ask what do you think about the public corridor indictment, what posted in Twitter? Maybe 1% of taxi drivers or people that work at restaurant use Twitter. So they would not have the same how to use indictment. Again, thank you for putting this. You want to see a difference in public housing, affordable housing for all. I'm not just saying it, I know it because I'm living it. Business, a small business, which is going to be my priority. Everybody said that they support a small business, but I will save a small business because I will make it a priority. My experience in education, I'm putting together, I'm working with youth programs because I'm not just an educator. I've been working to develop a structural system in our school and bringing programs already to our schools. When we bring computer science programs and robotics programs to our district, I want to lead. I want to be able to know how to navigate and make sure that our youth get the resources that we need.
Okay, we're out of time. Perfect. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much, Josue.
Thank you, thank you.
Together. Nice seeing you all.
Okay,
Same here.
good luck.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Just a minute, I'm just gonna. Okay, I'm gonna admit Carmen.
Okay,
Here we go.
Hi, good evening.
hi Carmen, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Good. Welcome to the UPA District 10 City Council Candidate Forum. I'll be the moderator tonight, and I want to let you know you have our first question will open up. We ask each candidate to start off by introducing themselves. Within the framework of the following two questions, you will have 2 minutes to answer. And the two questions are, since New York City public policy is so determined by the mayor and Albany, what power does the city council have to make a difference? And how do you differ from the other candidates seeking election to this office?
Well, first of all, thank you for taking the time to interview us and to get to know us a little bit better. I'm Carmen de la Rosa. Many of you know me as your current assembly member. I'm here to earn your support for city council, and I'm looking forward to entering into this robust conversation. I think there's some great candidates in this field, and I look forward to working with all of you to build coalitions to empower our community. So as many of you know, I grew up right here in Washington Heights. I immigrated from the Dominican Republic as a child, and my family settled in Inwood. My mother was a home health aide. My father was a bodeguero. He owned a grocery store. Like many immigrants do, I grew up understanding that our community had been left behind by government, and it's really what has driven my desire to enter government, to run for office, although that was never the plan for me. And now that I'm here, I feel like I found my purpose, a purpose of uplifting the most vulnerable, of calling out and dismantling systems of oppression, of racism, systems that leave behind communities like ours. And it's been the honor of my life to represent this district in the assembly. But I think that the issues that are coming before our city are too important for us to sit out, for us to be bystanders to the things that are happening. And that's why I've entered this race. The powers of the city council are to be a counterbalance to the mayor, obviously to legislate in favor of our communities, to make sure that we can legislate and pass budgets that are not balanced on the backs of working class communities. It's the work that I've done before being elected to office, when I ran a youth group in Upper Manhattan, or when I worked as a scheduler for Assemblymember Danny O'Donnell, or when I worked at the city council under current council member Idanis Rodriguez. Throughout this time, I have been someone that always listens to the needs of my community, because many of those needs are things that I myself experienced as a child growing up here. And as an assembly member, I have been at the forefront of fighting for immigrants' rights, for tenants' rights, for making sure that we have access to healthcare and mental health care, that we're fighting the climate crisis, and that we're making sure that people in our community feel engaged and government is accessible to them. I think those are also the powers of the council. The council is a watchdog over city agencies. The council makes sure that they have oversight over projects that are coming into our community. As all of you know, land use is a major power of the council. Making sure that we are not moving forward legislation or projects that are going to further displace our communities is something that I care deeply about. And so I'm looking forward to bringing my energy, bringing my voice, bringing my experience to the city council. Obviously, the field is a competent field, is a great field. I think that what makes me different is that I'm an actual legislator now, and that I've been elected to office. I have a public track record that is there for all to see. You can see the things I've stood for, you can see the things I fought for, and I think that I've always have an open door policy to work and build with our community. That's what I look forward to doing in the city council. Oh, you're on mute, Ina, sorry.
Thank you. Now we're on to the second section of the forum. This section will have 13 minutes, so you have about 4.5 minutes for each question.
Okay.
What committees will you seek to join in the city council and why?
Thank you for the question. It's a question that I've thought about a lot about and that keeps evolving. But I'll tell you the committees that I'm sure I want to be part of. The Housing and Buildings Committee. I think that I know that for our community, displacement is a major issue. I think that the powers that exist within the Housing and Buildings Committee to make sure that our building codes are up to date, to make sure that we're passing legislation and that we're bringing issues to curb displacement to the forefront will happen in that committee. I want to serve on the Finance Committee because I believe that we need to usher in an equitable budget process in our city that doesn't leave behind communities like ours. Criminal justice, because it's something that I care deeply about and have made a significant part of my legislative agenda in Albany around. Mental health, because we will have a mental health crisis on our hands. We've had one before the pandemic, and after the pandemic, we know that it's going to be overwhelming. And we also know that our community hasn't had the best access to mental health services. Small businesses, because our small businesses are the lifeblood of our city, but also because here in District 10, in District 72nd, which is the district I represent now, our small businesses are one of our largest employers. And we need to make sure that we are here to make sure that they have a just recovery and environmental protection. Because although I'm not an expert in all things environment, I know that our fight for social justice has to be tied to our fight for environmental justice. Our communities are the most impacted by those issues, and I look forward to serving on those and hopefully a few others.
Thank you. The second question, what are the top 3 legislative proposals you will fight for?
Thank you. They have a lot of intersectionality with the committees that I want to serve on, obviously. Housing, right? The creation of truly affordable housing as a way to combat housing instability in our community and displacement. The silent homelessness crisis, as I like to call it, because in our community, we have severe issues of lack of repairs. We also have severe issues of overcrowding. where families are doubled up and tripled up. And although those families are not accounted for in the shelter census, they are families that are technically homeless because they are not able to live in their own apartments. So I definitely want to tackle those issues of housing. The protection of immigrants. I'm looking forward to building an immigrant bill of rights for our city where we can work to empower immigrant workers, immigrant families, and make sure that New York City is an actual sanctuary city, not by name, but by action, where people feel protected and people feel that welcomed and belong and not erased any longer. Job creation, I wanna make sure that we are spurring job creation. One of the issues that has been at the forefront of our community is the underemployment that exists. Our community, even before the pandemic, was leading in unemployment. And so I wanna make sure that we're using our community as a place where we can build pipelines for employment, including green jobs, which is the central piece of this initiative that I'm calling the Higher Heights Initiative. So those are three of the main issues. Obviously, there's a lot more, but those are the three main ones that I would like to begin to address. And I apologize, there's some construction happening on my block. They're like paving the street.
Oh,
There's a
yes.
loudspeaker that keeps going off, telling people to move their cars.
Okay.
So I apologize in advance.
Okay. Some things are just totally out of our control. The last question is about real estate. The inward rezoning was passed. People are afraid of the displacement of residents and small businesses. What do you plan to do to ameliorate that situation? And what do you see as the main causes and solutions to housing and commercial rent costs here?
We need like more than 3 minutes for this question. I'm gonna try to make it as succinct as possible. But first, many of you know that I worked for the councilman for 5 years. I left his office in 2016 when I was elected to the state assembly, and I came out in opposition to the rezoning. When I was in his office, there were parts of the rezoning that I didn't agree with, and I let him know that as well. Mainly because I felt that the pulse, what the community wanted, wasn't reflected in that plan, and that there actually wasn't a robust campaign to make sure that our community was included in the wish list items that were eventually passed. On day one, I think that whoever's elected to the council, whether it's me or any of our colleagues, we have to have an assessment of what is still reversible in that rezoning. What are the things that we can undo, the harms that exist in that rezoning that can be undone? Obviously, we know that there was the Northern Manhattan Not for Sale Coalition that was created, and they're litigating the rezoning in court. But besides that, I think on day one, we have to try and take a census of what are the things that can be reversed. And then we have to have conversations in our community. Many of the people on this call, many of you worked tirelessly to bring forth a proposal that was in juxtaposition to the proposal that was voted out on the council. I think there's good bones there. I think there's a lot of just and equitable ideas in those proposals and the proposals brought forth at Community Board 12. I want us to retake those conversations and move towards a rezoning that makes sense for our community, the community I grew up in, the community I live in now, and I'm raising my daughter. As far as real estate and development, I think we have to have a serious look at preservation of the existing affordable housing stock and build a plan for preservation. We have to force both HPD and Department of Buildings and the mayor's office to the table to guarantee not only funding, but also legal services for our community to make sure that we can stop displacement. I also want to be able to boost our local public housing stock. Public housing is a gem, a treasure that we as a city have ignored for far too long. I have officially and publicly come out against RAD and against the Blueprint for Change, because I think that privatizing of NYCHA is a deadly error. And so I want to make sure that we are able to boost both of those things. And obviously the Rent Guidelines Board, whoever is our mayor, we have to build public pressure to make sure that the Rent Guidelines Board is staffed with people that understand the plights of tenants. Those are only a few of the things. There's obviously, the proposal by the community for community land trust, which I support. and as well as encouraging HDFCs and TILs to continue to exist. So those are just some of the ideas.
Thank you for that, Carmen. Now how are we doing on time, Tim?
We have 18 minutes.
Wow, that's pretty good. So this is now the section where, you know, Tim will give us a 5-minute warning before the end of the half hour for questions from the floor. So this is our questions from the floor section, which will appear, the questions will appear in the chat. If we run out of questions in the chat, we'll go to a lightning round with quick questions. So the first question is, and I think you touched on this, Carmen. Dennis Rodriguez sadly took the stance on real estate in Inwood that was against the interests of the working class community. How would your stance on affordable housing be different? I think you answered that.
Yes, thank you, Elizabeth, for the question. Yeah, I think I addressed that, but it comes with understanding that we cannot sell out our community for the interest of real estate, right? I think as an assembly member, I have proven that I am someone who's open and who keeps my word to our community. I think it starts with ensuring that we're having those conversations and ensuring that we have a plan so that people who are at the margins of our community are engaged in these conversations, not just do something for show, but really to make sure that people feel that they understand the plans that are coming forward and they have a moment to give input. That is where I am. I don't believe in the creation of affordable housing just for the sake of creating it or meeting some numbers. I firmly believe that the AMIs that are used are completely out of whack with the real reality of the people that walk into our offices every day that are at risk of displacement. And so I would want to address that issue as well. And so those are some of the things that I would do a little bit differently.
Thank you for that. Josh Curran asks, you are a valuable principled member of the assembly. Why do you want to give up that seat for a position in the city council? And there was an actual slip of the pen for a poison on the city council.
Well, hopefully there's no poison in the water, but you know, I'm going to be very honest with you all. There's a two prongs approach to why I made the decision. It was a tough one, and I entered the race late, obviously, because it was a bittersweet pill for me. I'm going to talk to you first about the mechanics of the assembly, and thank you for the principled and valued member. I try my best to bring my best face forward and everywhere that I am. But the best way to describe it to you is that the way that things move in the assembly, right? When you think about a pie of 150 people being split up to tackle the issues that really impact our community, to have a focused and keen direct impact on the lives, I think that the city council is the place to do that. And yes, I'm young, right? I can spend the next 10 years in Albany waiting for a committee. But I also feel that the fight that we're going to have in our city with the opportunity to elect a new speaker that is someone of value, electing a new mayor and ushering in a whole transformative leadership, that opportunity is here now. And I think that my voice, my experience, and the work that I've done shows that I am prepared to lead in that realm. And on the second reason is also because of personal reasons, right? I'm a mother of a young family. I have a 6-year-old. She's been dealing with me running for office since she was 1 year old, the first time I was elected. And it's time for me to come back home. Last year, my husband was diagnosed with a brain tumor. Unfortunately, he's doing well. He's gone through radiation. But part of being a leader is understanding when you are overextended. And when you're calling to be here in the city that you love with your family and still serving is here. And that is a decision that was hard to make, but is one that I made because I feel that I still have a lot to give and that my voice has transformed the processes in Albany, that I have been leading from a place of the best for my community, and I still have a lot more fight to give. And so I don't want to have to choose between being in Albany and being here for our community through this healing process and for my family. So that's just the honest truth coming from me.
I'm sorry about your partner.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, the next question is from David Dubnow. Hi, Carmen. Should police funding be reduced and policing totally reimagined? And if so, how?
Yes, absolutely. I was one of the first elected officials to publicly call for the defunding of the NYPD. We had some beautiful marches and rallies last summer on the heels of the murder of George Floyd. And many of us are sitting here tonight with our hearts broken, given what happened to Dante Wright just this week. And it's unacceptable. So in a community where we have been historically excluded from government intervention and services, it's unconscionable that the city council took a vote that put money into the NYPD's hands rather than into our social safety nets, rather into our health care system, rather than into our youth services, our education services. And I would absolutely be in support of reducing the NYPD budget and putting that money towards youth services, towards education, towards mental health, towards all of the things that we fight for on a daily basis. We also have to reimagine what police accountability looks like. I know that there's a question coming up in the lightning round about Commissioner Shea. I absolutely think that he should resign. I think that he has been derelict in his duties. And I think that, you know, he came to our community at the height of the hate crimes towards the Jewish communities and said that mass incarceration didn't exist in New York State. And as a member of the Corrections Committee, I've been visiting prisons for the last 4 years. And I can tell you that the faces of Black and Brown New Yorkers who are incarcerated at disproportionately high rates and who are serving long sentences without the possibility of parole is heartbreaking. And mass incarceration does exist in New York State, and it exists specifically for Black and Brown people. So we need to reimagine this whole system if we want to call it a justice system. And I've done some of that work. I'm leading the fight right now in Albany for parole reform, for elder parole and fair and timely parole, as well as taking out the wealth extraction piece of the mass industrial complex, which is really, really milking people who are incarcerated right now in our state. So I'm looking forward to bringing those two fights together to reimagine how we do policing in our communities. And by the way, my experiences are very tainted by growing up in Washington Heights in the 90s. I grew up right on Post Avenue. I was stopped and frisked. I was given summonses for standing in front of my buildings. My brother was literally arrested for wearing a white t-shirt when a police officer, you know, they got a call on the radio, you know, young Dominican, white t-shirt. All of them wear white t-shirts. If you've seen them growing up. And so I've seen those injustices firsthand, and they really, really colored my view of how policing works for communities like ours. So I want to make sure that we upend that system.
Thank you. How are we doing on time, Tim?
We're still fine. We have still plenty of time to continue. I'll give you the 5-minute warning.
Okay, so because there's 8 more questions. Now, the next question is from Tim. Who would you recommend to replace you in the assembly if you win this council seat?
Yeah, I mean, I think that there is a broad, obviously, crop of candidates that are looking to run. Obviously, we see from all the people that are running for the council seat now that there's interest in people running. I belong to the Northern Manhattan Democrats for Change Club. In that club, there's several people that want to run as well as you know, people that have stopped me on the street to say they'd be interested in running. Who I won't support is the council member, Adonis Rodriguez. So I want to put that out there and clear because I know there is a narrative that I'm switching seats with him. I am not switching seats with him, and I am not supporting for the assembly. So I hope I answered your question, Tim.
I've heard that rumor, by the way.
Yes, it's not true.
Okay, thank you for that clarification. The next question is from Elizabeth. Is there an existing law on building height? At 181st in Amsterdam, there's a high rise that is out of touch with the existing buildings that is to happen at 181st and Broadway.
I think that the building that Elizabeth is referring to is that new building that is the development that is going to be like a hotel and office space. There was a commercial use for that for that was zoned commercial. It used to be a gas station. It was, to my understanding, they didn't need to do like a rezoning or a change in land use in order to get that. They didn't need to go through a variant through the Department of City Planning, which they did to build, but they kind of built it based on what the zoning for that area is. And so, you know, I don't really support high density development. I think that it's out of touch with our community, as you very well stated, and I would prefer for us to be building housing here. And so that would be my preference, but I think that's the situation with that building.
Thank you for that. And Sarah asks, thank you for your work to bring justice and relief to excluded workers. How will you continue to support our undocumented community members?
Yeah, I mean, this is a fight that is so personal to me, you know, from visiting the border 2 years ago, right before the 2 years ago before the pandemic, to fighting for the New York State Dream Act, to this most recent victory for excluded workers. You know, I really have a unique immigration story where I came from the Dominican Republic as a baby. I was adopted there. I was orphaned as a newborn and adopted and brought here. And I feel that all of us have unique immigration stories, whether us or our ancestors. And so making sure that this is a city that welcomes people, that doesn't criminalize poverty, that doesn't criminalize immigrants, undocumented immigrants. I mean, we've heard some very vile rhetoric in the media lately about street vendors and what enforcement looks like, right? So I think for me, it's about bringing that lens of sanctuary to our city and making sure that our agencies, as well as state government and federal government, are working together to protect our undocumented brothers and sisters and our mixed status families, because there's some families that may have an undocumented parent, but a citizen child. Those people still have to plan for the events of deportation. And I think that we need to be standing up for them.
Okay, thank you for that. Are there any other
5-minute
questions?
warning point now.
Okay,
5
we have
minutes.
5-minute warning,
Okay,
which is plenty of time for the lightning round.
okay.
Would you accept member privilege? Yes or no?
No, but it's a two-edged sword, because if, you know, the member is in the pocket of real estate, we shouldn't have member deference. But there are some projects that are the members carrying the voice of the community. So it's a two-edged sword, but I don't believe there should be member deference. I think that our community should have the opportunity to chime in to the things that are happening across the city.
Would you, do you support the New York Health Act?
Wholeheartedly, yes, absolutely, 100%. We got to get it done. 9 more weeks.
Do you support the IONY, Invest in Our New York?
Yes, I wholeheartedly support it. I carry one of the bills on it. Senator Jackson carries a bill on it. We're going to continue to fight for that.
Which one of the 6 do you support?
All of them. I support all of them. I carry the mark-to-market tax, which is taxing the capital gains wealth of ultra billionaires in our city and state.
Are you accepting corporate donations, either directly or indirectly?
No.
You already answered about the Dermot. Do you believe Governor Cuomo should resign?
Yes, yesterday. He should have resigned yesterday.
Do you support the NYCHA RAD? I think you already answered that.
I don't support RAD and I don't support the blueprint.
And do you support a Green New Deal for NYCHA?
Yes, I do. I support a Green New Deal for NYCHA.
Okay. There's been some new questions in the chat. Julina asks, what was your proudest moment at the assembly?
What is my proudest moment in the assembly? You know, I've had a few proudest moments in the assembly. For sure, passing the New York State Dream Act was probably one of the proudest moments, because that was still when we had people come to Albany, and all the dreamers were in the back of the chamber, and they all started crying and screaming, and it was just a fight for the dreamers across the nation, and I was proud to carry that fight.
Cool. And Elizabeth says, sorry to repeat, but what is to happen on 181st Street and Broadway?
181st Street and Broadway. That's another development. I think that was where the old movie theater was.
Yes.
My understanding is that's going to be like a mixed use commercial kind of layout where there's going to be like some stores, chain stores, and other, a gym, I heard. I'm not 100% sure, but that's what I'm hearing. It's kind of like a commercial mixed use project.
I have a question. What can city council members do to prevent the speculative investments of corporate investors that have they don't care about our New York culture or communities?
Yeah, well, the first thing that the city council can do is not approve any of their zoning requests, right? Not approve any of the variances that they bring before the city planning commission. They often go there and they disguise themselves under different LLCs. We have to shine a light on these LLCs and who are the principals and connect those dots on behalf of our community. So I think that that's something that the city council can do. On the state level, I tried to pass a legislation around making sure that when there's a bona fide offer to sell off a building or a property, that there is information that is given to tenants. So that just to give warning to tenants that there's been like a flip of their building, and in the hopes that with tenants associations, we can kind of unmask the predatory equity components behind that.
Yes. And another question just
One
came
more
in.
question, then our time's up.
David Dubnow, asks, do you support Corey Johnson's rezoning plan, master plan?
I have just like started to read Corey's plan. I don't necessarily want to say I support it. I think that every community is different and we can't have blanket, proposals for across the city. We saw how harmful the mayor's MIH plan was. And so I want to take the time to look at that and really think about it in the context of Upper Manhattan. We have a unique community. And so, that's sort of where I am on Corey Johnson's plan.
Tim, is that the time?
Yeah, time's up.
Okay, thank you, Carmen. That's time.
Thank you. I'm going to leave my email in the chat. I know that there's one question from Mia. How could I mess that up? That's my daughter's name. Mia, about the 34th precinct. I'd love to engage with you about that. So I'm just gonna leave my contact here. Thank you all for having me. And for this honest dialogue. I appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Okay. All right.
Quick question to everybody. Do we want to take a 5-minute break before we do the other half? Or shall we just plow ahead because it's going to be a long night?
What time is it? It's 8:38. Are we, when do we?
We're going to be here till 9:30 as it is, so.
Okay.
Okay, so we'll just keep on going. Okay, very good. I'm going to admit Johanna then if we're all ready. What happened to Johanna?
No.
She vanished.
Hi, everyone.
Oh, there
Oh,
she
there
is.
she is. Great.
Hi.
Hi, Johanna.
I thought if I spoke, you could see me.
Yep.
Okay. Hi, Johanna. I'm going to be hosting tonight. And welcome to the UPA District 10 City Council Candidate Forum. It feels kind of strange that you were hosting a District 7 forum and now I'm hosting a District 10. The first section is going to be 2 minutes, and we ask each candidate to start off by introducing themselves within the framework of the following 2 questions. Since New York City public policy is so determined by the mayor and Albany, what power does the city council have to make a difference? And how do you differ from the other candidates seeking election to this office?
In regards to the power that the city council has, I think of the power that people have. So as a parent activist, I've been able to challenge the State Department of Education on the classes I've been able to call out lead in our schools. And I've been able, thankfully, to organize with other parents to bring home $4 billion for our underfunded schools. As just a regular person in this community, I've been able to be on the front lines to bring down the IDC, to disrupt corruption in the state Senate, so we can see all the reforms that we see now. And as an individual, I've been able to be one of the co-founders on the steering committee for North of Manhattan's Not for Sale. And I start with as an individual because the city council, as it is with every single position, is not only what you make of it, not only what that person puts into that position, but you can definitely be a bully pit in terms of holding the mayor, the executive branch on the city level, accountable. I'm going to pause here. Can you all hear me? Because all I hear is my son.
Yes, we can hear
Okay,
you.
okay, great, because my son's playing video games. Thank you. So as a city council member, and I think that's a really important question, it's really important not to pontificate on what we can do that are tied to federal or state. But I will say that because I have a deep understanding of not only how the city council budget works, legislation works, organizing works, coalition building works in the city council, because I was chief of staff in the city council, and also because I was executive director of the Black Latino Asian Caucus in the city council, which meant there were 27 members that were my boss for 18 months, and I was able to see a huge agenda citywide. I understand the dynamics of that institution, and I understand the dynamics of an institution that until 2-3 years ago was incredibly archaic and stuck in conservative hands. And I saw what the power of organizing can do. That means that I can talk to you traditionally what we can do in the city council, but I think that what's more important is understanding what people have done in the interim so that it can inform what a transformational city council can do, to actually rethink what city council can do and be really not just the torchbearer, but really the vanguard of and championing people's agendas in the halls of the chambers. I think it's also important to note that even though a city council member is solely elected by the individuals in their district, the decisions that they make impact a whole city. And I think that's a really, that's interesting. And it's also on the state level, of course, but because you're in the city, you kind of see everyone. You go home, you go to work, you're in the city, you go home, you're in the city. But I think it's really important to understand that that dynamic in terms of how we actually hold our electeds accountable, and that's why as a city council member, it will be incredibly important for me to understand how to build coalitions with the right counterparts and peers in the city council.
Thank you. The next section is 13 minutes. So each question, you'll have about 4.5 minutes to answer. The first of those questions is, what committees will you seek to join in the city council and why?
Okay, I don't think that'll take too long. I am a parent activist. I am an education activist. I started being active as a single mother of 3 children in this neighborhood by getting involved in my children's school, understanding that our schools right now are broken, and that as a single mother, I had to do what I could to make it better, not just for my children, but for their peers. So one of the first things and definitely one of the committees that I want to be a part of because of my history is education committee. I fought for funding, and I've been fighting, and I actually just left a meeting with 2 parent groups to make sure that we walk away from standardized testing. Standardized testing actually just furthers the inequities in our school system and actually just leads into the whole narrative of school to prison pipeline. So I definitely want to disrupt that and work in the education committee and lead so many discussions about dismantling racism and socioeconomic inequities in our schools and with our families. Secondly, definitely land use. We know that we were victims. We are, sorry. I want to say we were, but we are victims of an unjust predatory rezoning. And more than anything, I saw the importance of having a strong voice on the land use committee for several reasons. One, so that what is happening with the inward rezoning doesn't happen again. Two, so that I can go in there and change it from day one to every extent that I can. And third, because when I was in the Northern Manhattan, Northern Manhattan's not for sale, I saw how important it is to explain to our working class neighbors the importance and the nuances of policies. It is not an easy thing for anyone to really like sit down and understand how land use policies impact your quality of life, impact the vitality of our small businesses, impacts the landscape of our neighborhood, and impact how long we can actually stay in our neighborhood and how we honor those that have been here for generations. So I definitely want to be part of the land use committee for that reason. Followed by parks, because we have many beautiful parks that we have to preserve, and definitely youth, and definitely finance. I want to be on the finance committee. It's one of the most important committees in the city council, how we allocate our funding and having a say, a very strong, very community-centered conversation and being in the room when we're negotiating the budget. Another thing that our district has to be involved in, informed in, and activated to mobilize and hold everyone accountable in the room when it comes to negotiating the budget.
Okay, thank you for that. The next question is, what are the top 3 legislative proposals that you will fight for?
One of the first one is going to be the racial justice, the racial socioeconomic study impact for land use processes. The other, I mean, I hope that I don't have to, honestly, I hope that it will pass. But the other would be the Small Business Job Survival Act. It is a bill that I'm intimately aware and connected to, because when I worked in the city council as chief of staff to then council member Robert Jackson, he was the lead sponsor for that bill. I want to see it happen. I don't want it to be part of my top 3. I want it to just be done. I want that justice to just come to pass before 2022. And then there's other bills, of course, that come to the surface, like the honoring the vendors that's actually being discussed right now. But there are new ones that I actually want to introduce. For example, just like, and you're gonna see I'm very transparent, just like I've been able to organize in our schools around things that impact our communities. I want to be able to organize in our residential buildings and make sure that make it mandatory for every landlord to provide the space for tenant organizing, and making sure that the city council and the mayor's office in a mandatory statutory way actually funds and supports the organizing of tenant organizing. And that would be, of course, not directly, but by via community-based organizations.
Thank you for that. That really speaks to me. This next question is real estate. The inward rezoning was passed. People are afraid of the displacement of residents and small businesses. What do you plan to do to ameliorate that situation? And what do you see as the main causes and solutions to housing and commercial rent costs here? I know you've answered some of that already.
Yeah. You know, even though I have some time working in government, I'm an idealist. I have to be as an organizer. I believe that when we mobilize, we can actually create a change that we didn't even think was possible. We can go further than what we dreamt, right? So I want to first answer that my first order of business would be to start the process for a just rezoning that reflects what we did as North Manhattan's not for sale, so that we can replace and mitigate the damage that is being done before a just rezoning replaces it. So I just want to start there. Secondly, we have to look at what we have. Right now, we have overcrowded individuals in overcrowded apartments. We have a rise of homelessness across the city. And the answer is clear. We have to create more affordable housing. We have to put money into that. We have to invest in that. And we have to really have a conversation of affordable to whom. And right now there are policies that the mayor pushes that make that impossible. All that the mayor is focused on is having, like, I think he has a bedpost with scratches on it. Like, yes, affordable housing unit did it. But again, it is not affordable, certainly to not to this community. And we know also that not only does demand contribute, because this is New York City, where we're not going to have, even in this pandemic, we're not going to have individuals not wanting to live in New York City. And I'm going to tell you, my daughter is going to be 20 next year. Yes, this will always be her home, but I want her to get her own place. So we want to make sure that we have spaces where our families that are living intergenerationally have space. We don't have to accept to being overcrowded because we can't afford the rent, because our kids cannot afford to live in the neighborhood that they were raised in. So we definitely have to look at different solutions, like making sure, again, acquiring buildings for affordable housing. We have to look at the model of community land trust. And I think that right now, because of the pandemic and just because of how the economy works, there is a window of opportunity of how we can make those things happen with the right leadership.
Okay, thank you for that. Tim, how are we doing on time?
We have finished with time to spare, so we can go to questions from the chat.
Okay, so let's go to questions from the chat. What is your this is my question. What is your understanding of the school to jail pipeline? And please give specifics.
Oh, I love that question. I've been working on that my whole life, pretty much. So I mentioned standardized testing. Standardized testing is a way of communicating to students that they're going to be measured based on their parents' access to wealth. And what I mean by that is that our number one, our children are standardized. Number two, the standardized test was designed to prove that other than white students, you just don't have the intellect. It was definitely designed a way to segregate and to lock out students of color and lower socioeconomic means. That is the genesis of standardized testing. And what that leads to is students feeling like they are failures. Also, standardized testing has been used to weaponize against our public schools that are overcrowded, that are under-resourced, and justified closing. Another thing that we have to look at in terms of disturbing the school to prison pipeline is overcrowded classrooms. When you have overcrowded classrooms and you have students who are dealing with so much at home because they live in under-resourced and neglected neighborhoods with limited resources, they come with demands and needs that a teacher in an overcrowded classroom cannot address. What happens? That student falls through the cracks. And add to that there aren't any social workers and counselors in our schools to really address separately the needs. Add to that our children don't have art. Add to that our children don't have space for therapeutic services to address the special needs. Add to that they don't have sports. Add to that they don't have green space or open space as is mandated by the state for have physical education. Add to that they don't have access to good options when you're looking at for college. And add to that, and the worst thing in our school system, not the worst, there's a lot of things, are the metal detectors that tell a student the minute they walk through that school that they are considered a criminal, and that is their trajectory, that they live in institutions that are expecting them to end up in jail. These are things that we need to disrupt, and add to that, of course, we need to move towards police-free schools.
Thank you for that. The next question would be from Josh. Would you support legislation? I keep trying to read without my glasses. Would you support legislation, and if needed, city charter revision to allow the city council to override the mayor's sole power to implement an executive budget and legislate its own budget?
Yes, definitely. I think that it is, so having been part of budget negotiations in the city council, there's something that we, not endearly, but in a way, refer to as the budget dance. And what that means is that the mayor subjects the city council and the public, by extension, into a dance of, here's my budget and this is what I'm gonna cut. And you gotta figure out if you like that, if you like senior centers, if you believe in senior centers, you're gonna have to figure out how to pay for it. If you believe in reducing class sizes, I'm gonna take money away from that. You have to figure how to, and then you have not-for-profits that are providing a good for our community that are also what we call the chopping block. And so then we get into this budget dance, and it is a distraction. It is a distraction from what we can actually get on top of that. So what, in terms of the budgetary process, we need to look at as a community and as a new city council, what we are going to baseline. We need to push the mayor to baseline things that we know it's not up for negotiation. Senior centers are not up for negotiation. Keeping our firehouses is not up for negotiations. Making sure that our kids are fed and that people have a place to sleep, that is not up for negotiation. I think it is ridiculous. I know people say that the budget is a moral document, but I invite you to look at the process of getting to the moral document. It is ridiculous that we have to entertain the idea of fighting for things that should be baseline. So absolutely yes to that answer.
Okay, thank you for that. Next question, Jamirna. What initiatives have you taken to integrate white and colored members of the district?
I think I need a little bit more specifics. In terms of Black and white. I mean, in everything that I do in terms of coalition building, going back to Uptown Community Democrats, going back to fighting for school funding, going back to organizing via North Manhattan's Not for Sale, every single initiative that I've done as a volunteer, as a community person involved, does not say we're going to work here. What I do is that I make sure that we are centering the voices of those impacted. And the majority of times, if not all of the times, those that are impacted are people of color. And we integrate because we always want allies. And we always appreciate that whether you have the privilege because you're white, or you have access to power, or you have access to wealth, whatever that is, if you are aligned with those principles and you can understand that we are first putting upfront and centering the voices and the experiences of those impacted, to the extent that they are, to the extent that they're even leading these conversations, then that is the process by which I do that in everything that I do. I appreciate the question. I just wanted to make sure that I was answering it with clarity, because that is something that's just second nature to me in everything that I do.
Thank you for that. David Dubnow, as a council member, how would you structurally change policing?
The money. So right now we know that question is really sensitive because of what is going on in another part of the country. So we
Yes, I
definitely,
saw you at the rally.
yeah, we definitely have to really, when you look at the whole pie of the city council budget and you see how much money, what a percentage of that money is going towards policing our community. That's how I look at it. Policing our communities. It is disturbing when I know we get calls about mental health. We get calls about sanitation issues. We get calls about access to healthcare. There's just so many human services that are lacking. We see the disinvestment in our communities. I always say that when you identify a school that is under resourced, right around it, 10 blocks radius, you see a community that has been neglected and abandoned and is a victim of disinvestment. So I would change completely in terms of how we're funding the NYPD. But I think we have to go so much deeper than that. Our our law enforcement is based on white supremacy, and we have to not shy away from calling it out and actually forcing everyone that has a say and that has control to root it out. And that includes changing the structure where the commissioner is more beholden and answers to the public. The commissioner and, my gosh, the union has way too much power, way too much power. They're very closely aligned also, no surprise, to real estate. It's almost like this shadow group that runs and controls and has power over our city. And what we have to do is that we have to radically rip the curtain back and change it. We have to disrupt it. We have to, break up that table. Just
Before we end, can you please drop your email into the chat so that if other people have questions that they think about later, they can contact you?
yes.
Coming up on the 5-minute warning moment.
Okay, all right. Are there any more questions? Thank you. Okay, I don't think we have any more questions, but we do have the lightning round ones. If we have a minute, it's a yes, these are yes or no. Would you accept member privilege?
Is that member difference? I was looking at that. Okay, no,
Do you support the New York Health Act?
of course.
Do you support invest in our New York?
Support it, did everything to make sure it passed, and we actually were the lead sponsor for Taxing the Rich.
Are you accepting corporate donations, either directly or indirectly?
Not at all.
Do you believe NYPD Commissioner Dermot Shea should resign?
A long time ago.
Do you believe Governor Cuomo should resign?
A long time ago, my gosh.
Do you support RAD for NYCHA?
No,
Do you support a Green New Deal for NYCHA?
of course.
Okay, those are all the questions that I have.
Okay.
Okay, thank you for coming. And
What about a final statement, as
answers.
the other ones have had a chance for a final statement?
Oh, that's right. That's right. I didn't know if we had enough time.
Yes, we do.
Okay, so how much time does she have?
We have 4 minutes.
Oh, that's a lot of time. Go ahead with a final statement then.
Okay, usually I feel pressure by not having enough time, and now I have pressure to fill up 4 minutes. Let me just first say that thank you for doing this. I know that UPA is an organization that has been out there and cares about what happens to the community. What I really honor and appreciate about UPA is the minutia. You all have conversations about the minutia of government on a federal level, on a state level, and on a city level. Like, you actually have conversations and force people to say, wait, stop, this is how the mechanism works. So I just want to say that I appreciate that, because I think that that is part of who I am in empowering people to get involved in democracy. And I have fought alongside of many of you on the issues that impact our community and have been on the right side of things. I am someone who takes feedback. I am not afraid of being told that I need to do better. Actually, I want to always be told that I need to do better because I don't want to be limited by my own vision. I want to be unlimited by the possibilities that you see for our district. I am someone who you're going to see, first of all, I just want to say that I have the government experience, I have the community experience, and the issues that we are championing every day are the issues that are important to me because I am living them. I know what it's like to be displaced. I know what it is to be a survivor of domestic violence. I know what it's like to feel discrimination and racism. I know what it's like to make sure that my children have the best education that they can, because regardless of what they look like, every child needs that. So I want to walk this journey with you because I've walked so many other journeys with you. And I want to make sure that for the first time ever, the class of City Council 2022 have voices that are very familiar with you. You're not going to have to wonder how I process or think things because I'm always going to come back to you. I'm always going to come back to you because my agenda in the City Council is your agenda. That's not rhetoric. That's just the way that I operate. Again, I thank you for what you're doing. I thank you for this opportunity. And I thank you in advance for what I know you'll continue to do as UPA.
Tim, how are we doing on time?
Still a minute and a half.
There's one question that popped up from Josh. Do you support Mark Levine's efforts to establish a municipal bank in order to avoid all the fees incurred from borrowing from commercial banks?
Yes, and actually it's also good in terms of getting away from supporting banks that support fossil fuel. So yes, of course.
And a question for me, do you support Corey Johnson's master plan?
No,
Is
No,
that
no.
a definitive no?
Mm-mm.
Okay. I don't have any more questions. Does anybody else have any questions? Okay. So I think that we've come to the end of this section, and thank you very much for your answers.
Thank you, Lina.
Thank you.
Facilitator. Thank you, everyone.
Bye, Johanna.
Stay safe.
You too. Okay, we have Angela Fernandez in the waiting room, and I will admit her now.
Angie.
You ready, Lena? You want
Angie. I'm getting a little, like, I need
to?
to,
No.
let's move.
Here we go.
Let's move forward.
She's muted when she comes in, but. Angela, if you could unmute yourself, please.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes. Now we can. I don't know where she is. Where did she go? I don't see her.
Use speaker view.
Speaker view. Okay, speaker view.
And then if
I
she
see
talks,
you.
say something, Angela.
Hi, can you hear me?
Okay, now I see you. All right. I hate to talk to Tim when I'm, looking at Tim when I'm talking to you. How you doing, Angela?
I'm good. How are you?
Good, good. Welcome to the UPA District 10 City Council Candidate Forum. We're going to jump right in.
Okay.
Ask each candidate to start off by introducing themselves within the framework of the following 2 questions. Let me put my glasses on for this. Okay. Since New York City public policy is so determined by the mayor and Albany, what power does the city council have to make a difference? And how do you differ from the other candidates seeking election to this office?
Great. So I would like to center this actually in my personal life because it's all very much connected. So I'm the daughter of immigrants, and one of the things that's so important to highlight that many immigrants don't usually do so is that Many times we're here because of US imperialism, and I am here in the United States because of US imperialism. My mother had to flee the Dominican Republic because the United States sent troops into Santo Domingo. My mother fought against the troops and as a result had to flee and go to the south of Spain, where she met my father, who also came from a family that fought in the Spanish Civil War against Franco. My mother then came to the United States. She grabbed, as we say in Spanish, agarró a su tigre, and brought him to the United States. And I was born as the child of undocumented immigrants. I started working at the age of 12 and haven't stopped since. When I was at college, I paid my way through college, cleaning houses on the weekends. I was a security guard at night and painting houses during the summers. When I attended Columbia Law School, I worked as a super. When I graduated law school, my parents told me, and this was their value, their mindset, Angela, with that powerful tool, you must use it to help our community, which is what I have been doing ever since. I became the executive director of the Northern Manhattan Coalition for Immigrant Rights, and for 10 years, under my leadership, we fought against the deportation of thousands of our neighbors, helped thousands of our neighbors become US citizens, and we fought together hand in hand against ICE, agitating against ICE, and successfully educating and negotiating with our local elected officials to create the sanctuary laws that exist in this city today. That is a story that is born from directly impacted people in Washington Heights that became a model across the country. And we have to do that at the city level and at the state level. So that's an example of work that I've already been able to accomplish addressing your earlier question. And why were we able to do that? Because we centered the most marginalized in our community, and that is immigrants with criminal convictions, that even within the immigrants' rights movement, we were excluded because they considered it too much of a hot topic. But we stayed firm and led this fight because we understood that our collective liberation as a country is tied up directly with the collective liberation of the most oppressed and the most marginalized in our community. And I've always stood firm on this. When I became New York State Commissioner for the Division of Human Rights, I was able to discover a section in the New York State Human Rights Law, which is the oldest anti-discriminatory law in the country, that says that the New York State Human Rights Law must be applied as liberally as possible. I saw that as my green light to be able to reorient the agency and be much more aggressive in its application of the law. I took 200 investigators, lawyers, and administrative law judges, and within 1 year, we were able to increase the amount of monetary damages to New Yorkers by 25%, totaling $6 million. And we increased the amount of cases that were able to be in favor of people who had been discriminated against. I'm a single mom. I'm 50 years old, and this is my first time running. And I'm the only candidate that has led multiple grassroots movements at the local and at the national level, leading to transformational change at both the local and the national level. I'm the only candidate that has worked at the federal level as the district chief of staff for Congressman Jose Serrano, at the state level as a commissioner of the Division of Human Rights, and at the city level as a board member for 3 years of the CCRB, the largest police oversight agency in the country adjudicating cases. And I'm the only candidate that has had executive leadership experience, taking an idea and a vision and turning it into reality. Executives get things done. And so if you are looking for more of the same in terms of political representation that we have had up here, I'm not your candidate. But if you are looking for a representative that will forge the political path for our collective safety and our collective health so that we can all thrive together, then I am your candidate. And I have already been able to do that at the city, at the state, and at the national level. Thank you.
Woo. Wow. Okay, we are going to our second half of this part. And I'm going to be asking 3 questions. You have 13 minutes approximately about 4.5 minutes for each question. What committees will you seek to join in the city council and why?
So in my experience of almost a decade of negotiating directly with the city council, not only for changes in laws that I mentioned, but also in the creation of two different initiatives that are funded initiatives. One is called the Day Laborer Workforce Initiative, which is now, I think, a $10 million initiative that funds grassroots organizations around the city to provide worker centers, which provides training and a safe place for people, for day laborers to seek work. And then the other initiative, which is the Universal Representation, the Universal Representation Program that provides free attorneys to detained immigrants, but funded by the city. Those are two also, that's another initiative that we won. What was critical was the Finance Committee. And so I would like to serve on the Finance Committee to be able to have that ability to work with advocates and directly impacted individuals to identify initiatives that we can create that will provide funding, that will directly help people that need this assistance. I would also like to be on the B&T. It's not a committee, but it's the B&T group, which also deals with budgeting and negotiation. And I would like to be on the Public Safety Committee, which makes a lot of decisions around policing and public safety. And I see that you mentioned a caucus. I would definitely want to be part of the caucus, of the Progressive Caucus. And any other ones, I think there might be some new caucuses that get created with this new class of city council members. And I'm sure that together we'll cook up some interesting caucuses together. Okay.
Second question. What are the top 3 legislative proposals you will fight for?
Mm-hmm. So there is our small businesses in our community, as we all know, are being squeezed in so many different directions. And so there is already a bill introduced. And so I would fight. I don't think it's going to get passed this year. So I would love to pick it up and fight for it and work on it in partnership. It will need Albany's partnership as well. And that's the commercial rent stabilization bill. It is also something that once existed in New York City. So it is in our DNA, and it existed from the 1940s until the 1960s when it was allowed to be expired. But the scenarios that the small businesses were facing at that time are exactly the same that they are facing today. The other ones that I would want to, I mean, there's so many, but one of them is, it also requires working with Albany, but we have a lot of abandoned buildings in our community. We have buildings that have been abandoned for 15 to 20 years, and they need to be taken over. And I would propose eminent domain and that they be converted into deeply affordable housing. I would also use that tool against landlords that have racked up years of fines and violations because they have clearly, they clearly do not have the ability, the responsibility, or the moral fiber to continue to own these buildings where people are being warehoused in atrocious conditions. Additionally, I think that rather than say a third bill, what I want to talk about are the fact that we actually have agencies that have the law behind them to be able to rectify a lot of the problems that we have, additionally in housing. So I would say that let's fund these agencies appropriately so that they actually have the teeth to be able to apply these laws that many are laws that have been fought for from other social justice movements.
Okay. Thank you for that. The next question is about real estate. The Inwood rezoning was passed. People are afraid. Sorry, I need to get my glasses on. People are afraid of the displacement of residents and small businesses. What do you plan to do to ameliorate the situation? And what do you see as the main causes and solutions to housing and commercial rent costs here?
So the problem is just New York City and its government, and we really saw this under the Bloomberg administration, became a kind of like a canvas for real estate developers to do whatever they want to make a profit. So what we need to do is, first, kind of understand that as a baseline, and then take the power of the agencies that we have, and really start going after the landlords that are taking advantage of the situation by harassing tenants to push them out, by engaging in speculation, and ensure that that the people that are here today can continue to live here today. With regard to the commercial rents, one of the challenges that exist is that, and there's a great piece in the New York Times about this, published a few years ago, that the landlords are disincentivized to lower the rent in empty storefronts because it will impact the valuation of their building. And so we need to take a look, and I think that's also at the state level, on how we can decouple that so that landlords actually will decrease the rent so that they can turn empty storefronts into storefronts that are being used by businesses. There are many advocacy organizations that are doing a tremendous amount of work on the ground that I would want to partner with, because much of this has to do with the details. And when you understand that, you have to really understand the details of what any changes to the law would be, that actually will then lead to positive outcomes in legal changes that can actually provide help and assistance to individuals, whether it be individual tenants or commercial tenants.
Okay, thank you for that. Tim, how are we doing on time? How much time do we have?
We're good because we started after 9 o'clock, so we are looking at 12 minutes before the 5 minutes warning.
Okay, so we have what? Hi, Angela, from David Dubnow. Please tell us what structural changes you would make in policing.
So number one, we need to have the ability to see the entire NYPD budget. The NYPD budget is not a transparent document, and so I think it's really important that we start from there. The research that I've been able to do around the NYPD is that they have, for example, something the equivalent of a surgeon general. And that surgeon general has a very high salary. And additionally, they have 5 clinics. And I think to myself, what are these clinics for? Who are they for? So there you have like a piece of, kind of a expenditure there. And that's just one. I mean, there are plenty of others like that. Additionally, New York City pays $200 million in settlements that arise from police brutality, but that $200 million that's about the average of every year, does not come out of the NYPD budget. It comes out of the city budget. I say that we change that and that we have it come out of the NYPD budget.
That's taxpayer dollars, yeah?
Completely, absolutely. Let's also look at what people understand as being a $6 billion budget. That's the number that's thrown around. It's actually $11 billion because $5 billion of it pay for their very robust health and pension. So another structural change that I would make is, number one, I mean, besides reducing the budget by $3 billion, I would additionally be looking at police officers. They're about an average of I think it's almost 200 police officers that are still paid on staff that have been shown, their cases have been, have shown that they've engaged in abusive misconduct. They need to be fired, and they need to not be receiving a pension. I think that I don't know if you saw that we have a robotic dog NYPD robotic dog at the cost of $75,000. Imagine what we could do with $75,000 in terms
Weird.
of housing a family for a few years, helping them with their rent, or helping a small business owner with $75,000 with their rent. There is just such a, and you're right, weird, a robotic dog. That was literally, they had the test run. Guess where they did the test run?
Where?
They didn't do the test run in the Upper East Side.
Oh,
They did the
oh.
test run in the Bronx.
Wow. Not surprising.
So, and that's what we need. I mean, we need people, listen, this is like, I'm battle tested because why? Because I went toe to toe against ICE. I've had my phones tapped. I know what it's like, but I'm not afraid because this is just too important. The suffering, I've been doing canvassing every day. And this is something I already knew, but it still shocks the conscience that, I knew it because of my work at Northern Manhattan Coalition, but to talk to a woman and then she starts crying, saying that her daughter was just deported 2 years ago. She came with her when she was 7 and she left behind 8 children. I mean, this is the kind of system. I have many men, many young men tell me, Angela, they live only 3 blocks from Fort Washington. They tell me, I want to vote for you, but I have a felony. Guess what? You actually can register to vote in New York State, even with a felony, but they don't know this. And I think it's by design. So, we need a city council member that understands the complexities, understands how oppression works, and has a track record of successfully taking things that are considered unrealistic and actually turning them into reality, but hand in hand with directly impacted communities, because then it benefits all of us.
Thank you for that. Certainly very passionate about that. A question from Jumirna. What makes you significantly different from the other candidates? I think you've mentioned quite a number of things.
I'll share this. I am the only candidate that is independent of the establishment. And I am the only candidate that has consistently for the last 20 years developed and grown in their work and everything they've achieved by their own 2 feet. And I don't say that as a critique at all, because I don't say that as a critique. I'm just saying simply myself and my experience here in the community. I'm also the only candidate that has deep ties east of Broadway and has deep ties west of Broadway. And that is also through many, many years of very deep work in the trenches. I don't come from a political tradition that treats another sector of the community as an appendage.
Okay, let's go to, okay. I attended a discussion with a member of the CCRB who shared that, in their opinion, not enough people know about the CCRB. Do you agree with that? And if so, what can or should be done to educate people about it?
Yeah, no, it is very true. The CCRB, which by the way, the funding of the CCRB is $20 million a year compared to, again, the $11 billion of the NYPD. So it's a very disproportionate
How much did you say?
I'm sorry, $20 million. $20 million. And so you're right, not enough people know about the CCRB. While I was there, the CCRB was able to hire a number of different communications people that started to really kind of open that up. But the other issue with it is that the CCRB doesn't have final authority. So we would find charges for abuse of police, and then the commissioner still had, the NYPD commissioner, still had final say. And many times they would just throw out our charges out the window like an emperor. So that needs to be changed. the final authority. Again, that is at the Albany level, just like 50A was at the Albany level. And so I think that when you have that combination of some people feeling like that the CCRB isn't as powerful enough, combined with, very small budget for outreach, that creates some limitations. I will say that while I was there, the CCRB created a youth summit led by children from the age of 9 all the way up to, I think, 21. And that was organized by one of our communication staff, and it was tremendous. It was a tremendous youth-led summit around police abuse and what they envision as public safety. But there's plenty more that can be done, and it requires funding, more funding, and some changes in the law.
I skipped over some questions. I didn't know, my own questions that I had. What would you do to take corporate money out of politics?
So you mean at the city level? So what's interesting, because we had a charter revision commission that really made municipal campaigns more democratic, with the matching funds, with the limits and how much one can donate. The city council campaigns or municipal campaigns say very clearly you can't accept from a certain, from corporate, from LLCs and that nature. The problem is that now you have the IEs, the independent expenditures. And so the independent expenditures, there's no limit. And so that is what we're seeing now in this particular race, this particular municipal race. We saw it in the special elections that happened, that independent expenditures flooded and came in to influence the special elections, and some of them successful, some of them not. Seems to me like independent expenditures should be eliminated.
From Amy, what environmental measures would you work to enact?
So we have this great law that was passed in 2019 at the state level. And I'm sorry, because I always have to look at the name of it because it's a very long name. It's the Climate and Community Protection Act. I think I'm still missing one word, but it says that buildings, it's many things, but one of the things that I think is very relevant to us is that buildings in New York City must be retrofitted to reduce their emissions. The carbon emissions in New York City, 70% of them come from buildings. And I think that is such a tremendous opportunity to retrofit buildings in our community that right now, many of them are extremely unhealthy to live in, due to poor upkeep, and are also dangerous because of electrical wiring issues. We've had 4 fires in the last, I think, 8 months, just in a 20-block radius of our community. And we need funding for that. And there was a hearing today at the state level to discuss how to get funding to pay for this. It is going to be very expensive, but we have to do this. We retrofit our buildings, not only so that they reduce the carbon emissions, but that they also be safe and healthy places for our families to live.
That sounds good to me. Can laws be changed in New York City so that mental health calls and routine traffic stops are not answered by people with guns?
Absolutely.
By David.
I say absolutely, because there were laws that we designed when I was at the coalition that everyone would tell us was crazy, and then we actually got them done. Now, in this very specific piece, do we need to get the state involved? I'm not 100% sure, to be honest with you. But if we have to do that, then that's what we have to do. And if not, then we move forward and do exactly that. There are so many areas in which the police are not, that they actually are counterproductive if they are the ones leading in the response. And we know that, and we've seen that. We have an endemic issue in our country around the concept of public safety. We have to have a lot of conversations around how we define public safety, and that public safety is actually linked to having a home, that is actually linked to having access to free healthcare or low-cost healthcare, that is linked to having life-affirming after-school activities for our children. If we start having that conversation, then we can really start reallocating our budget to fund that.
We're at the 5-minute mark, so.
Okay, so you have 5 more minutes. What kind of dog do you have?
I have a miniature poodle. Thank you for that question.
I heard in the background. Okay, I don't want to take any more of that.
Oh, I see a question here about subpoena power.
Yes.
The CCRB has subpoena power. We used to subpoena stuff all the time. I heard somebody else saying that they wanted to give them subpoena power, and I was very confused. We could subpoena whenever there was a case. Right at the beginning of the case, we would get all of the information. We would get the cameras from the bodegas, the cameras from the corners, to gather everything. And if they don't want to give it to us, then we would issue subpoenas.
Okay. Rana, how about making cops live in the 5 boroughs within the
I think that makes a lot of sense. And I think that it can be done. There are many jobs that government jobs that you're obligated to live in either the state or the city that you work in.
Okay. Somebody said that I skipped some questions. I do not see the questions that I skipped. Speak now or forever hold your peace.
I sent that before, Lena, and you caught it. So all good.
We've got lightning round questions, and they're sort of softball for Angela. Questions asked on the spur of the moment. Would you accept member deference privilege?
No.
Do you support the New York Health Act?
Absolutely, 1,000%. Like, yes.
Do you support Invest in Our New York, and which bills out of the 6?
Yes, I like all 6, but I like all of them because we need them. We need the inheritance tax. We need the one that I actually think is really interesting is which is it's slightly different, but it's the stock transfer the stock transfer one, but they changed it because it's changed since the 80s, the function. And if we were able to tax on all of these earnings or all of these trades in stocks and derivatives, I think that it would generate a tremendous amount of funding. I like all of them, but that one is my favorite.
Okay. Are you accepting corporate donations either directly or indirectly?
No.
Do you believe NYPD Commissioner Dermot Shea should resign?
Yes.
Do you believe Governor Cuomo should resign?
Yes.
Do you
I was,
support?
and can I just add, I think I was the first and I think the only former commissioner, highest ranking state level official, and I was in his cabinet, that put out in a tweet that impeachment proceedings must begin. And before that, I actually said that I believe Lindsey Boylan, as former commissioner of the Division of Human Rights, where I implemented the expanded sexual harassment laws that came out of the Me Too movement.
Yeah, that was
the reason I said impeachment in my tweet rather than resign is because saying to resign is like saying we should have Queen Elizabeth resign. Like we need the impeachment proceedings to begin. But yes, I do think he should resign. But in terms of from a practical perspective, it's the impeachment.
Gotcha, because he's not resigning. Do you support RAD? NYCHA?
No.
Do you support a Green New Deal for NYCHA?
Yes, very much so.
And we just got another question in the chat from David Dubnow. Can laws be changed in New York City so that mental health? Oh no, wait a minute, that's not a new one. Hold on, Ms. Fernandez didn't really answer in terms of environmental measures. This is Amy, but of other kinds in addition to existing environmental.
Okay. Sure. Yeah, no. I mean, I have it laid out in my, I didn't want to take up too much time. I have it laid out in the platform. It's on the website. I invite you all to go to Angela Fernandez.
Can you drop it in the chat?
Sure. Let me just do that right now, very, very quickly.
Drop all of the information that you want people to contact you. That was quick.
So inspired by the Civic Conservation Corps of FDR, I propose an urban CCC that would actually pay for people to be trained and be able to work in engaging in a very on the ground, fairly, I think, easy climate mitigation. Number one, for example, creation of sidewalks that are porous that can, as the rains increases, can absorb that. Additionally, creating more shade, also to mitigate the increasing heat in the climate, and any other projects that we could have people essentially be hired and trained, paid for under the UCCC program that I'm proposing. I also think there's two more things. We know that the Superstorm Sandy created flooding in our Dykeman houses, which is NYCHA housing, which actually was at great risk for plumbing. So we need to mitigate and create a structure, or actually I'm going to leave it to the scientists, but create what it is that we need to ensure that when we have another Superstorm Sandy, that the basement of Dykeman houses do not get flooded again, and any other climate protections there. I also think that we need to work with our educators, and what I would love, but again, I would leave it to the educators. What I would love is a kind of environmental science space where we can have the children in our community go and actually work on the ground, learning about environmental impacts, learning about climate mitigation, but in a very hands-on way. Again, I'm not the educator. I leave it to the educators, but I think that we have to have a very intentional and designated way in which our children can learn early on what's happening and learn about ways to mitigate it.
We're out of time.
Okay, that was fabulous. Thank you, Angela, for those
so much for
very
this opportunity.
thorough and
Yes, I agree with Amy.
answers. That was amazing. Okay, and so
I just would love to add one thing. Climate is huge. Climate mitigation, environmental is huge. So, Amy, I absolutely agree with you on that.
Okay. What about the climate destruction in the first place? So what by the time children are learning about it, it will be too late.
We need to eliminate fossil fuels. We need to eliminate. So yeah, I agree. But thank you so much. I really appreciate this opportunity, and I really appreciate your time. I am politically and philosophically aligned with UPA. I have been a fan of Bernie Sanders since he was mayor. And when he came to New York City in 2016, I helped organize young people, mostly Dominican kids from our neighborhood, to meet him at United Palace when he came during his presidential run, and I've been a supporter since. So thank you for all of your work in supporting him during his 2 primary races.
Okay, so we've run out of time. Thank you so much. We will, we may or may not endorse this was for our being able to listen to and hear the candidates and where they come from, where they're coming from, and what their issues, their passion lies, and what they're about. So thank you again, and have a great night.
Thank you.
Bye, Angela.
Bye. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, everybody. Thank you,
did
Lena,
it.
for doing a great job.
Lena was fantastic.
Thank you.
Thank you, Lena. You did a great
Yes,
job.
thank you.
So real quickly, before we all turn it into the
Yeah,
public,
great job, Lena.
Don't leave,
we'll
everybody.
circulate tomorrow an email with any notes that Rana took that might help us compare the candidates, with a link to the video so people who weren't here can review it, and a link to a straw poll so that people can give us a sense of where they are about the candidates. And then we'll decide whether we're going to think about endorsing.
What a fantastic forum this was. These were, wow, it was great. I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, I thought it was terrific.
I thought it had so much passion, right? It's like, Carmen and Josue with his teachers, freaking Johanna, and then Angela, like, blow us out of the water. I don't know. Can we say who we like?
Late now.
They're not here, so I just want to say, Angela's got my vote. Just like the way
Let me just say that what we're going to do in the straw poll is a ranked choice, so you can
She's got
rank
my vote too.
in any order you like.
Okay.
Anyway, thank you.
Excellent.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you so much. Are we leaving out now?
I guess we are, unless anybody people can stay on and talk.
We can take a minute
I just wanted to, I have a question for you, Tim.
Yeah.
What is the process now? The short stick thing? I didn't quite grasp that.
You're asking Ting, right?
Ting, yes. Oh, that's right. I said Tim. Sorry, Ting.
What do you mean by short stick?
Sorry.
What do you mean by short stick?
I read something that we were having like some short stick vote.
Maybe short end of the stick?
Straw poll.
No.
No.
I'm a little punchy right now. 2 hours of this.
It'll be a straw poll that you can rank the 4 candidates in any way you want.
Okay. And so
Thing
we're
is, the vote
looking
open
out for an
to.
email?
Yeah,
Is the
I'll
straw
send out
vote
an email
open-
tomorrow morning with a link to the video, with a link to the straw poll. And if Ronna had any notes that we can share, we'll send them too. Whatever we can give people, in other words, especially for people who couldn't make it.
Okay. I have to say I am a social worker by trade, so this wasn't too much of a stretch.
And we'll be hearing from Lena on the District 7, our forum for May,
Yeah.
as well as,
When is that coming up?
Next month.
Oh, that's not tomorrow.
it's the second Tuesday in May.
Okay, second Tuesday in May. All right.
Can I ask a question? Not everybody here, I think, is on the UPA general list. So in terms of the straw poll, are there people not getting the calendar and not on our list so that everybody who's here tonight can participate in the straw poll?
Yeah, if they want to stick their emails in the chat, I will record it.
Okay.
Thank you, Julie.
That's the answer to your question, Carlos. It's in the chat. I think you have to put your email in if you're not already on our mailing list.
Right, if you're already getting the calendar, then don't do that. It'll just confuse me. If not, please do.
Okay.
Okay, well, good night, folks, and thanks again.
Good night.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Good night. Thank you.
That's good energy.
All right.
Lena, you get to go have a drink.
I'm a teetotaler.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
I didn't say what you could drink, just whatever.
Oh, okay. Seltzer water is my choice of thing.
Yeah, well, I gotta have supper because I haven't really eaten yet.
Oh, yeah, you better eat.
Yeah, I know. Two back-to-back meetings are not good for scheduling meals.
Listen, before you go, Ronna,
Yes.
I don't have your number.
Really?
Yeah, and I've been wanting to get together with in terms of the commercial stuff.
Yes. I'm gonna send it to you in the private direct message to you.
Okay, so don't cut us off yet, Ting.
Nope.
All right.
You got it?
Yeah.
So is that Senator Jackson who's actually here, or is it one of his staff people using his?
We will never know.
Yeah, well,
They're just lurking.
someone's gonna say hi to, but I think they left. And I don't
It could have
remember.
been Johanna for all we know.
Oh,
Well, she had her own window. So.
No, but she had his.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
He was in addition.
Mhm.
how was attendance? I saw that we were up to like 32 at some point.
34.
That's what they're.
That's
Right.
not bad.
Yeah.
Pretty good.
I've seen smaller ones.
I mean, it's not a huge number of people, but it's people who are going to sway quite a few voters because, I know people ask me whom they should vote for, and
Well.
they're not plugged into all this stuff.
Yeah.
So I know that some of the other groups up here reached out to their members about coming. And I don't know all the people who came, so. some of the-
Yeah, the arena group was, was off. We have to, we keep the focus on the housing, and Housing Justice for All had a Zoom meeting tonight about the state of affairs. So,
Yeah, we have 3 meetings.
okay. Rana, please forgive me if I don't get back to you right away because
No, it's fine.
I am in the middle of a campaign.
Yes.
All right.
No explanations
Sure,
required.
Okay.
Frankly, I have to say I wasn't satisfied with Angela Fernandez's answers on environmental issues. She kind of
Yeah.
kept like veering off to slightly related things.
Got
You know,
it.
that whole issue of member privilege is a little more complicated. It's not black and white because, there's two elements to it as far as I understand. One is that the members respect somebody who wants to say no to a particular project.
Hmm.
But they also give them carte blanche to say yes to this whole radical rezoning. And nobody dares vote against it if the member, so they really say, okay, you own your district.
Yes, you do.
Right.
And
That's what
that's outrageous.
Oh, I was kind of she was talking about making sure that people on parole know I'm not that people who have been in prison know about getting their the right to vote back. And I remember in the 90s I was involved in a group that was registering voters. We ran into somebody in Central Park and asked he registered to vote, and he said he couldn't because he was on parole, but he knew that once his parole was up he was eligible to register. So I was glad to know that people did get informed about that.
Actually, now you don't have
I
to
hope
be
that-
off of parole. You can actually
Oh, really?
write the governor's office and ask for a pardon.
Oh, okay. Well, this governor, I don't know how.
Yeah, how many
much
people
do.
do that?
Yeah,
People
I
don't
don't know. I
know,
hope
and
they know
people
they
don't
can.
feel like they're entitled to that. And
Yeah,
they-
it sounds like they aren't informed the way
they're
that
not
that man
informed.
was.
I've been given out today. It was voter registration day for
Oh.
felons on the corners.
Wow.
Yeah.
I don't know anything about that. How does that?
Want to re-enfranchise.
Yeah,
folks.
I'd be interested in that.
We can, if you can get maybe go to your local board of elections and ask for. We need to ask for the voter registration forms.
Mhm.
We can definitely get like 500
Yeah.
for UPA on because they ask you what organization are you with. So if we can say UPA, maybe that's something that we want to do.
Yeah, and so who did you say to write to?
The board of elections.
Okay.
You actually can go to the board of elections and pick up the voter registration cards, and the felons can write to the governor's office and request a pardon.
Huh.
Yeah, that's new.
Okay.
They don't have to wait till they're off of parole and probation.
Okay.
I'd like to get off. It's okay with everybody.
Sure.
Yeah, same.
Okay.
And you're the host, so that means it shuts down, right?
Well,
Yes.
I'll shut it down unless anybody has anything they got to talk about.
No, that's good.
Okay, great. Well, thanks again, Lena. And Tim.
Thank you for allowing me to.
Oh, and you're talking just felons, right? Not people convicted of misdemeanors or.
People with misdemeanors, I think, don't have a problem with.
Okay.
With
I can
zoning,
ask. I can ask the BOE about that too.
Okay. That's.
I'm not sure I'll get around to it, frankly, but anyway, thanks everybody.
Yep.
Okay, Amy.
Good to see you folks.
Good night.
Okay.
Yeah.
Take care.
Yeah.
You too. Bye. I hope you all
Bye-bye.